let's dive right into this. You're not surprised by the vote that was the results last night that were released at 9:30?
Not surprised. Disappointed that we seem to be continuing on this treadmill of action and then escalation of action when, you know, our goal has been to continue to negotiate and get a negotiated settlement. So I feel the frustration that everyone else feels is, why can't we wrestle this to the ground and get it done? And that's not an easy place to be because, you know, as government, we have a responsibility to protect teachers. That's part of our job as well. Students and their learning outcomes and parents and their families and, you know, how this affects their lives every single day. So it's frustrating. And, you know, I have said and I continue to say, I would wish that we could stop the strike action, finish the school year on a positive note, stay at the table, bargain hard, as we did with CUPE. We just got a settlement, a tentative settlement, and it took 5 days of hard bargaining. CUPE represented their members vigorously. Government brought its position, but we were able to come to a settlement in 5 days.
Well, I think it's fair to say in this situation, the bargaining system is broken. We're in week 3 of rotating teacher strikes. We hear the impact on social media. Teachers, parents, students, everyone is frustrated in this. What specific moves, now that we're in this predicament where there's the serious threat of a strike, what specific moves can government make at this point to move this negotiation forward?
Well, we have already made significant moves. We changed our request for a 10-year deal to a 6-year deal, which in effect will be 5 years because we're already 1 year out of the other contract expiring. We moved on salaries. We put more money on the table for that. We also moved on the signing bonus for every teacher. One of the complaints was, you know, we're out of step with other unions because we had 2 years of net zeros, but that is because they're 1 year out of sequence with all of the other public sector unions as well. So
you neglected to mention class composition.
Yeah, and class composition and class size, if you look at the CUPE tentative agreement, we put some of the Learning Improvement Fund on the table with CUPE, who represent the teaching assistants in classrooms. And when you talk about composition issues, it's about additional support in those classes where there are needs that need to be addressed. And that's up to the individual school principals and teachers to deal with. But we put that on the table with CUPE, and that was part of the hard negotiations that we did. But we've been
on the table with the BCTF?
Absolutely. It has been right from the beginning. It's a $225 million fund, $75 million a year that we put for that issue alone. But when we put it on the table after the court case, not the most recent, but the one before that, we wanted to sit down with the BCTF and talk about how we use that money to deal with composition. And you know what? They weren't willing to work with us to deal with that. They wanted to wait for the court case.
So compromise is so key now that we're in this position. This is one of the highest voter turnouts for the BCTF to validate the idea of a movement. We get on both sides there has been discussion, there have been concessions, but right now, what can be done for the government to take more action? Because what's been done up until this point simply just isn't working.
Well, we are not prepared to rush to legislation. We've been on that treadmill for over 30 years. And what happens is we have disruption, we have legislation, and we end up in court. BCTF takes us to court every time. We want to break that cycle. That's not good for anyone. It's not good for teachers. It's definitely not good for students and parents and the system. And, you know, our responsibility as government is to represent all of those parties at the bargaining table. And we're the only one in the room that has to do that. We have to balance the needs of teachers, students, and parents, and the taxpayers. And that's not an easy place to be. But I think the way we can get there is for the teachers to say to their leadership, you need to move. What we're asking for right now, just in salaries and benefits alone, is significantly out of step with other settlements that public sector unions have been able to negotiate with government. This government is not looking for disruption. We want settlements. We've proven we can do them. We continue to work hard to do it.
We're hearing the teachers clearly do not want to have to walk picket lines and let their students down. Great frustration on our Twitter, on our Facebook page. We've been receiving emails en masse from parents and teachers, but predominantly teachers. We have one comment. We promised to share one question for Peter Fassbender. So if we could put up, Kelly Smith sent us this. I have a student who needs one-on-one help, but there is no money to get it for him, so he continues to disrupt the class. He is on an entirely different educational program, which I made, and takes 1/3 of my time and energy. Other children are missing out. What do you say to Kelly Smith and to teachers like her?
Well, to Kelly, I would say that's why we have a Learning Improvement Fund, to deal with that. That's why we settled with CUPE to hire more teaching assistants, because Kelly needs to look at the whole class, and if there is a teaching assistant in that class that can deal with that one student and to provide that support. And I've been in schools where I've seen TAs where there is a child that is highly dysfunctional, where they take that child out of the classroom, they sit in the hall, they do some work until that child settles down, and then they come back into the class. And our goal in society is not to segregate students who have needs, but to try and integrate them, but in a way that we can balance that with the needs of the other students. And that's why we have things like teaching assistants. We want to work with the BCTF on that very issue.
Is there a cap on the number of students like that need TAs? Is there a cap on the number that happens in each class?
Well, that is up to the individual principal and the individual teacher to work that out. And, the government can't mandate, because every student is unique, whether they have special needs or whether they are gifted. So it's not our job as government to dictate those things. That's why arbitrary formulas don't work. But what does work is providing the support, and we're prepared to look at that. We're prepared to work with that. That's why we put that kind of money on the table. And that's what's frustrating for me, because I don't want to see any student, any child, any family negatively affected. And I really believe if we could stop this dysfunction, get at the table, and hammer out a deal. Is it going to be easy? No. Is there going to have to be give and take? Yes. We've proven we're prepared to give. We've shown it in significant steps. Haven't seen that commensurate response from the BCTF. And I think for teachers, for parents, for students, for all of us, that's very unfortunate.
Final comment. How long is the government willing to let this go on for?
Well, I said we're not prepared to rush to legislation, because then we're just back on the treadmill. If we were to legislate, I suspect we might have another court case. And we've got to stop it. The BCTF has spent millions and millions and millions of their members' dollars in court legislation. We want to see that stopped. That's not of any advantage to them or to us. So let's end that. Let's find a new way, a new relationship. And am I dreaming the impossible dream? I don't think so. But we have to have willingness on both sides. And I can say, our premier, our government, we want to change. We want to change the way we do business. But the answer has been, just give us everything we're asking for and everything will be fine. That's not realistic.
Education Minister Peter Fassbender, thanks so much for joining us on this all-important issue. And big thanks to the viewers. Michelle, a lot of important feedback we're receiving from teachers, parents, students alike.